Hey there friends, how's it going? So welcome back to my course on practical music theory, and today I want to talk about the circle of fifths. Now the circle of fifths is a diagram, right? It's a visualization that has been around for hundreds of years, and it's incredibly popular and incredibly well used or often used, and it can do many different things. It's almost like a Swiss Army knife when it comes to music theory. It lets you look at the relationships between certain notes, certain chords, between major and minor chords. It helps you see the chords in a certain key. It helps you identify, the 1, 4, 5 of whatever key you're in quite easily. There's all kinds of awesome ways you can use this, and it's such an elegant and sort of efficient design, right? I really wanted to include it in this first batch of videos for this course because in addition to all the other diagrams I've made on my PDF cheat sheets, this deserves a place on there, right? But this can be used, like I said, for many different functions. So that's why it's worth sharing. A lot of these tables show you one thing, with specific and helpful detail, but they're only showing you one thing each. The circle of fifths can do many things, and that's why it's the musician's friend in many, many ways. So let me help describe this to you and show you a few common ways you can use it, okay? So earlier on in this course, I talked about the 12 notes, and I talked about how you can look at the 12 notes in a circle. You remember this, right? You can sort of arrange them in a circle, and as you go clockwise, you're sort of going up in pitch, you're going forward in the alphabet, and as you go counterclockwise, you're going backwards in the alphabet and down in pitch. But the important part is things repeat in a cycle. They go around and around and around. There's no beginning and no end. The circle of fifths looks the same exact way, right? The format's the same, but the difference is instead of jumping one half step at a time as we move from square to square, as we move clockwise, we're going to jump 7 half steps, right? 7 notes, right? Or as far as intervals are concerned, a perfect fifth. So if I'm on E and I jump 7 notes up, I'm going to go to B, and if I had a long enough fretboard, I could demonstrate that for you, right? So we're basically going to move around a perfect fifth at a time. Now, so far, this isn't necessarily the most helpful thing, but things get really helpful when we add an inner ring to it, right? So instead of having just the notes on the outside, this gives us major chords on the outside and minor chords on the inside. And you'll notice that they're arranged a certain way where if you look at the D major chord on the outside, for example, it doesn't have D minor right on the inside. It has B minor. And then you'll notice that the A has F sharp minor right inside of it. And you might be like, why is it like that, right? There's a really good reason. It's not a mistake, okay? So the idea here is that, here's a few ways to use it. Remember earlier on I was showing you the chords in each key, right? I showed you a table that looks like this, and here's the 5 most common keys, and here's the 6 chords in each key that we're going to be using all the time. This is a helpful diagram for sure. You can pick out a key, you can see which the chords are that belong in that key and everything. But what's cool about it is the circle of fifths lets you do the same thing in arguably a much more efficient way, right? How it would work is we pick any note or any chord actually on the outer ring, any major chord. This is going to be our key center. So let's just pick C to keep things simple. And then if you look at the squares surrounding C, the 2 major chords on the left and the right, there's one on the left, one on the right, or one counterclockwise, one clockwise, and then there's 3 minor chords, right? So these are all the ones that are sort of directly adjacent to it. These are, in total, the 6 chords in the key of C. And you can see it, right? If you look at the table, which has, the C, the D minor, the E minor, the F, the G, the A minor. If you look at what's selected in the circle of fifths, you have your C, and then you have your F and your G are your other 2 major chords. And then your minor chords are going to be your D minor, A minor, and E minor. And you can see that it matches perfectly. And you could repeat this for any other key, and you get the same exact thing. If we look at the key of A, we're going to see that the other major chords are D and E, right? Those are our 4 and our 5 chords respectively. And then likewise, the minor chords in there are going to be our B minor, our C sharp minor, and our F sharp minor, right? So you can use this, just showing you that, you can use the circle of fifths to say, hey, I'm going to play something in the key of G. What are the chords again? If you looked at the circle of fifths, you could see, okay, G, C, and D are my major chords, okay. And then I'm going to have G and E minor is going to be one of my minor chords, and G and A minor is going to be another minor chord, and then there's a B minor in there. Okay, so those are the chords that you're going to be using whenever you're playing in the key of G, okay? So it works like this for all the keys. That's a great thing about it. And we don't have to write down any chord twice. That's sort of where the efficiency comes in, okay? Now, let me talk about a few other ways to use it. Say we want to get even simpler and just look at the 1, 4, 5 in any given key. And we talked about this in previous lessons, right? The 1, 4, 5 are the 3 major chords in whatever key you're playing in, okay? So if I'm in the key of C, right, I have F and G are my 4 and 5 chords, right? If I'm in the key of D, right, G and A are my 4 and 5 chords, right? If I'm in the key of E, right, I have A and B are my 4 and 5 chords. I can play the A down here, the B right here. It doesn't matter where you play it, right? The 4 and the 5 chords themselves don't change. One quick tip about recognizing the 4 and the 5 chords is they're always one letter away, right? So you have your E, for example, but then you go up to A and B. Those are going to be your 4 and 5. In the key of D, G and A are, they're just one letter away as far as the musical alphabet is concerned, right? So that's one helpful way to look at it is you have any chord on the outside can be your 1 chord. Now you go counterclockwise once, that's your 4 chord, and you go clockwise, that's your 5 chord. It's a really handy way of just sort of learning your 1, 4, 5 chords. So those are really, really helpful to know because those are the major chords in any key. They're used super often. So one other topic I want to talk about here in the circle of fifths is relative majors and relative minors. Now I haven't talked about this yet, but the circle of fifths makes it really easy to identify what the relative major is of any specific chord, right? Or any specific key. So on the topic of chords, if you look at any chord on the outer ring and then you look at the minor chord just below it, that's going to be the relative minor version of that major chord. I think of these chords as almost being like twins of each other, where the major chord is, the winner, the happy, the triumphant one, and then the inner ring is going to be the sad, sort of just, minor version, but it's going to have this similar sound, right? So if I look at my D and my B minor, right? These actually share 2 of the same 3 notes. So there's only a 1 note difference between them. But I think there's a sort of a similar sound, right? Same with our E and our C sharp minor. They don't sound exactly the same, but there's a relative similarity to them, right? G and E minor. You're gonna notice these chords used all the time. The 6th chord is what the relative minor is to the 1. So whatever key we're in, the 1 chord is our tonic, that's sort of our home base, and then the 6th chord is the relative minor of that same chord. Okay, it's going to sound similar. The 6th chord is going to be used a lot of the time in any major key. So I think that's one thing to be aware of, is you look at any major chord on the outside, you just look directly inside 1 chord, that's going to be your relative minor chord. Now here's another deal about relative majors and minors. When we get to the chords and the notes in minor keys, which we haven't covered yet, every major key has like a minor twin that has the same notes and the same chords. And you guessed it, it's the relative minor. So the key of C, right, has our C, our D minor, our E minor, our F, our G, our B diminished. The key of A minor has those exact same chords. Our A minor, our B diminished, our C major, right? Our D minor, our E minor, our F, our G. It's the same exact chords. The order is just different. And likewise, the A minor scale uses the same notes as the C major scale. It's just the starting point is different. The best way I've seen this summed up is if you look at the words respect and spectre. Notice how they have the same exact letters in the same exact order. It's just the starting point that's different. That's exactly how major chords work with their relative minor. Every major key, every major scale has its relative minor counterpart, right? And you can use a circle of fifths to identify it, okay? So that's just one example even further of how the circle of fifths can be helpful. So if you're ever thinking, hey, this song is in the key of A minor, what's the relative major of A minor? Oh, it's C. And if I know my chords in the key of C backwards and forwards, I can just sort of use those when playing something in the key of A minor. And as far as a mental crutch, it might be helpful for you. So that's just yet another way the circle of fifths can be helpful. So I hope this is helpful for you. I recommend getting the PDF and printing it out and just keeping it on a wall or somewhere nearby for when you're playing, so you can use it and start to connect the dots and realize like, oh yeah, I'm in this key and I'm using those chords, or oh yeah, that's that secondary dominant that he mentioned, right? This is one of those things that's going to help you connect the dots. All right, so I hope this was helpful for you, and yeah, get onto it and good luck.